Hey everybody, John Odermatt coming at you real quick before we get started with today's show. Just wanted to let you guys know of an incredible offer to join the Lions of Liberty Pride. Right now, honestly, is the best time to join the Pride before the end of the year. We have a couple amazing offers. If you join by going to patreon.com/Lions of Liberty, join for $10 per month. You're going to get in addition to everything else you get, all the merchandise, all the bonus content, the Facebook group, all that stuff, you're going to get our Taxation is Death holiday mug. If you join for $15 per month, you're going to get the mug, and we have a winter beanie holiday Lions of Liberty hat that you're going to get. And also on top of that, guys, we're doing a raffle across the entire Lions of Liberty Pride. Everybody in the Pride is entered in. The more that you contribute per month, the more raffle tickets you get. And the winner of that raffle, which is going to be drawn, I think, on Christmas Day. And this Pride special runs up until midnight on Christmas Eve to join the Pride. So the raffle's Christmas Day, and the winner gets a mug, a hoodie, a hat, and also a giant bag of our Morning Roar coffee. Guys, you can't beat it. Join the Lions of Liberty Pride. We need your support. We want your support. Go to patreon.com/Lions of Liberty. Thank you so much for your support.
Welcome to Felony Friday, a presentation of the Lions of Liberty podcast. Here is your host, John Odermatt.
Felons, friends, and freedom lovers, welcome back to another edition of Felony Friday, a weekly show right here on the OG Libertarian Variety Podcast, the Lions of Liberty Podcast, where we bring you 3 unique shows every single week. Kick off every week with our Monday show, our flagship program hosted by Mark Clare, where Mark brings you interviews with leaders in the liberty movement. Every Wednesday, we have Electric Liberty Land hosted by Brian McWilliams. He brings you your weekly shot of culture, comedy, and liberty. And every Friday on Felony Friday, I take a look at the broken criminal justice system. Today on Felony Friday, have an awesome show. I'm going to be talking with a former cop from Denmark, Lars Anderson, who is now into activism and did some really, really unique things and some really noteworthy headline-grabbing things while he was still a police officer. I'll introduce Lars in just a minute. Before I do that, I want to remind you guys that the show notes page can be found at lionsofliberty.com/FF207 because it's episode 207 of Felony Friday. And with that being said, let's get rolling into today's interview. My guest today on Felony Friday is Lars Anderson. Lars is a former Danish police officer. He made headlines in his home city of Copenhagen when he refused to enforce drug laws, leading to his departure from the police force. Lars, welcome to Felony Friday.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for coming on the show. And I first heard of you when you were a guest on Free Man Beyond the Wall with our friend here, Pete Quinones. And that interview really piqued my interest in what's going on in the activism you've been doing over there in Denmark. So I want to talk about all that stuff. But first, just to give my audience, an idea of what policing is like in Denmark. And I guess before we get to that point even, why you wanted to become a police officer. If you could start there and sort of explain what drove you into that career path.
Yeah, well, I started policing probably because I started soldiering. I was in the Danish army for about 3 years. And a lot of my colleagues in the army, they gravitated towards the police, and I did too. So after a brief period of me studying to be a merchant officer in the naval, in the merchant marines, I started in the police academy in Copenhagen just because I got bored doing civilian stuff. So when the government, they have a monopoly on quote unquote exciting stuff, that blowing shit up and doing stuff like that, driving with sirens and stuff, then some people, they just gravitate towards that, and I did too.
So what made you want to, before that, what made you want to go into the military?
Not a sense of patriotism. I think more a sense of adventure. I think that was my main driver, just doing something different and testing myself and doing stuff that I wasn't used to and couldn't do in civilian life. So I think that was my main motivation for both policing and soldiering.
Okay, so you start policing, and how many years total did you serve as a police officer?
About 4 years from starting at the police academy until I took my resignation. So not a long time. I just barely graduated. No, I did graduate with okay grades, but I just got out of police academy and I was on the streets for a couple of months before I just realized that I was a libertarian, really. So I didn't serve as a police officer for very long. When you serve as a police academy student, you are working in the streets. So I had a couple of years of street work in my time as a police academy student.
So was this working like in the U.S.? You have your local police officers who work for local towns and communities. Then you have your state police officers and then federal police officers. So which capacity were you working in Denmark?
In Denmark, we only have state police. Police is only one unit. We don't have a federal and a state level and a local level. We only have one level of policing, and that's the state police. So that's where I was, and I was just a lowly street cop, really. So a badge and a gun and a car and driving to drunken disorderlies and thefts and robberies and things like that. Nothing major, nothing too exciting.
So you said that you started to, after working for just a few months, you started to realize that you were a libertarian. I mean, was this something that was just sort of naturally in you, that you started to realize that maybe some of the things you were doing were going against your ethics, or was it something you read or saw? Or?
Well, not at first. I worked as a street cop for a couple of years during police academy training, and I didn't give philosophy or politics any thought at all. So I did all the things that are expected of you, drug busts and frisking people for cannabis and whatnot. So it was only when I graduated police academy and I started reading a little bit about, liberty, classical liberalism in the European sense, that I started thinking that some of the things I did really didn't help anyone. So that got the ball rolling, and it was unstoppable from there, really, because I tend to want to follow my principles, like to their logical conclusion, and when you do that, you can't really be a cop. At least not if your principles are liberty and the non-aggression principle.
Right. Well, it's funny you say that, and I 100% agree with that statement. But I've gotten in Facebook debates or different discussions on social media, and the person who is opposing my view that I'll be critical of police officers often, and they'll say, "Well, why don't you just sign up and become a police officer and change the system?" I'm like, "Well, that's really not how it works. It's the system isn't changed by the by participating in the system. That's sort of reinforcing what they're doing."
Yeah, and people, they are still making that argument that I should join politics because now I'm pretty involved in activism and stuff. And they say, why don't you get elected into parliament? And I just, no, I don't want to be a part of that gang. But people, they really want me to participate in all kinds of stuff. So yeah, it's the same argument, just on another level.
Right. So am I right in that, those first months where you're serving as a cop, you finish your police academy, that you were already blogging and writing and putting some stuff out there on the internet, some anti-policing things?
Not very anti-policing per se. I was in Denmark. We have state television. We have a big state de facto monopoly on media. So I started as a police officer opposing this state monopoly, and I didn't want to pay the TV license. And I was very loud about that fact that I didn't want to pay. And it was a story in the Danish media because this police officer wouldn't pay the state fee for TV licensing.
How much is the fee for TV licensing?
It's about it was a couple of $100 a year, I think.
And that's every citizen has to pay that, or how does that work?
Every household has to pay that, and if you're married to somebody and there are two in the same household, you don't have to pay 2 licenses. But if you are living together, 2 friends, you have to pay 2 licenses. So it's a little odd like that, but it's a pretty high fee for the state-run television.
And also, all that money goes to their production of their state propaganda, pretty much.
Yeah, news and also entertainment. It's a part of the government job in Denmark to provide entertainment, TV entertainment for the people of Denmark, and all kinds of things. And their news coverage is, not surprisingly, very, very collectively minded, like pro-welfare state, pro all kinds of government programs, really.
Not to go too far off topic, but I'm too curious. So how is this viewed generally in Denmark? Do people enjoy the state-run entertainment and all that stuff?
Some do. It's like there's a divide in people, and some more conservative-leaning people, they know that the state-run TV has a slant towards collectivism and socialism and those kind of things. But yeah, it's not uncommon that people, they don't like the state-run television, and it's definitely not uncommon that they hate the television licensing, because people, they come to visit you if you don't pay, and peek into your windows and see if you have a television hanging on your wall and stuff like that. It's a little 1984-ish, and now it's being put on the regular tax. So the TV licensing is disappearing, but the government television is not. It's just put on the regular income tax.
Oh, so they're just hiding it a little bit better.
They are, and I'm really against that, because the other TV licensing thing, you could get rid of that. You could just say you don't own an internet connection or a television or whatever, and you could get out of that. And when it's on the income tax, it's really pretty hard for most people to get out of. So yeah.
That's really interesting, and I'm sure a lot of my my U.S. listeners are surprised by this. At least I am. I didn't know this these facts about Danish culture.
Yeah, I guess you're pretty appalled about the construction of a TV licensing scheme. Really, it's just very un-American in most people's views, I guess.
Yeah, I know they do something. Maybe is this common throughout Europe? Because I know they do something similar in Ireland, where you pay a tax per TV you have.
It is really common in Europe. Yeah.
Okay.
Unfortunately.
I'm glad we don't have that here yet, at least.
Just give it 10 years' time, then.
Right. You also became vocal about not wanting to enforce the drug laws while you were a cop, right? This was still you were serving as a police officer?
Yes, I started blogging a little bit, and my first blog post, I didn't flat out refuse to enforce drug laws. I just wrote that I thought it was a very bad idea and very counterproductive if you wanted people to be healthy and free, and you didn't want gang violence and gang crime. So that was my first blog post, and that got a lot of traction, really. And then I made my second blog post when I flat out refused to enforce the drug laws in the country, and that got me into a lot of exciting times, you can say. And I got an interview with both television, not state-run television, but the other other television station in Denmark. And I also got an interview with my boss at the police station, wanting to hear what that was about. And it ended up with me not being in the Danish police force anymore.
So you officially resigned. Was it something where you were pretty much forced to resign?
Well, yeah, more or less. I knew where it was going, so it was just might as well resign by my own decision, because I knew that sooner or later I was going to be fired. So I didn't want to go through that. So I just resigned. I knew I was ending up there anyways.
What sort of reaction did you get at the time from fellow police officers, others in law enforcement?
Different reactions. Some of them, they could see my points, and some of them, they really just thought I was crazy. I can remember speaking to one of my colleagues in the car about drug prohibition, and we just started fighting, basically, and he just ended the conversation saying to me that he didn't want to listen to my liberty bullshit anymore. So that was that. So there's some truth in when your paycheck demands you to believe in something or not to believe in something, then your mind is made up, because if it has consequences for your life, believing something, you probably lean towards not having those consequences.
So what are the penalties or the sentencing laws for the drug law in Denmark? Are they, things have eased a little bit in the U.S. recently, specifically around marijuana. Medical marijuana has become legalized in most states in the United States, recreational in a few. At the state level, of course, we still have our ridiculous federal law. But what are the laws over there in Denmark?
There are pretty zero tolerance. There's no real medicinal marijuana legalization, and there's a zero tolerance politics towards possessing and selling and dealing and everything. So small amounts, it's fines, and when you move up the amounts, you can end up like 10, 12 years in prison.
So I'm assuming there's still a demand, probably. People probably still want to smoke marijuana. So So what's the black market situation like? Is there violence associated with it? Are there gangs? Are there, what's the situation there?
There are lots of violence, actually. There are gangs, particularly immigrant gangs are really the ones supplying the market with illegal drugs. And in Denmark, we have that area in Copenhagen that's called Christiania. And that's an area where police really can't enforce drug laws, because it is so organized that they are selling it in the streets, like totally obviously. And they try to raid it several times a week, but they always just pop up again. And it's a really good example of agorism, because police, they can't really keep it down. They can't stop it, even though they really try. So it's only like 2 or 3 miles from Parliament, and they're selling weed legal. They're selling weed totally obviously in the streets. So we have that in Denmark, and many people, they think that it's legal in Denmark because it's sold there totally without trying to hide it, but it isn't. They're just very good at withstanding the police.
So has it reached the point that obviously the people in that area are accepting of, they're not opposed to selling marijuana, but what about the penalties? Obviously they're still arresting some people. So they're just, are they looking at it from a view that they're doing something, ethically, or maybe some of them have a libertarian or, an agorist background based in some sort of principle? Or is it just, we don't care, we're just going to do what we want?
I think it's mostly the latter, actually. I spoke to a guy who has been to prison, and he spoke with drug dealers, and he said they sounded like they knew they did something wrong. So yeah, I was caught and blah, blah, blah. And so I don't think there's a great deal of principle thinking going on there. They just do it because they can make money off it, really.
Yeah. That's why a lot of people do it.
Yeah.
That's why the market will never go away, no matter how much the government tries to prohibit it.
Exactly.
So, speaking about doing things, obviously going in opposition to laws, you did something where you were selling joints on the Danish Attorney General's, was it his Facebook page? Or?
Yeah, his open Facebook page. Well, when I quit being a cop, I just thought, okay, I have to do something about this. My newfound principle, I really have to be true against it. So I just thought about it and how can I make a difference? And I came to the conclusion that I could make political activism. So I got a hold of 20 joints, I think, and I started selling them, as you said, on the Attorney General's Facebook page, and that made huge waves because this former cop started to do crazy things, and it was something the news outlets really wanted to cover. So in that regard, it was a great success, and the police in the beginning, they didn't really want to do anything about it because they just thought it was too crazy or something. But I started being really adamant about reporting myself. Just why are you not doing anything? What I'm doing is illegal, so you gotta do something about it. And they finally did, and they came to my house. I wasn't home, and I had actually moved, so it was the next tenant that had the pleasure of meeting the police. It was a good example of political activism, I guess, because with my pretty limited resources, I could make I could get a lot of attention, pointing out that the laws of the country are wrong.
So they didn't charge you with any crimes?
Oh, they did, but it was just minor stuff. It was I got a fine or something. It was not a major thing, and I guess the police they could see, or they regarded me as just a minor nuisance. Just they knew that I wasn't dealing drugs in a big scale, so they didn't probably give me a lot of attention.
See, that's interesting because maybe I'm wrong, but I think if somebody tried something similar in the U.S., they would do the opposite. They would realize that you were gaining attention from it and influence, and they would probably try to make an example out of you and charge you with all kinds of drug laws and violations for selling drugs across state lines and all those kinds of different things. But
I think that the U.S. drug enforcement is a bit more draconian than Danish drug enforcement is. Really. That's at least what I hear and what I see.
So you've gone from being a cop to really, would you consider yourself now a full-time activist, or,
Yeah, I am. This year I just I started my YouTube channel, started making videos about all kinds of political subjects, principles, voluntarism, political commentary. And now I'm pretty much a full-time activist. And it's going pretty well being just a full-time political activist, and I get donations and I can more or less live off of it. So yeah, and I've been doing it more or less in some form or another for 10 years now. It was in 2010, the summer of 2010, that I left the police force.
So are you approaching this from a libertarian background? Is it like what are your goals and visions for pushing liberty forward in Denmark? Are you trying to grow I know you said you didn't want to get into politics, but are you just trying to grow sort of more activists and gain momentum that way?
Well, I just think that I am trying to change people's minds one person at a time. And it's very rewarding for me when people, they come up or online, they come up to me and say, hey, you just changed my mind. And I'm either a voluntarist or I've become a minarchist, or I just become more critical of power, political power. And I think that's my goal, just changing people's minds and influencing people that way. Because I know that I'm not we're not going to live in Kabistan anytime soon. So my bar is a little lower than that. If I was really just into the final goal, I would be depressed all the time.
What's been the temperature of people being receptive for this change in Denmark? Do you think that it's kind of hard to gauge in the U.S. Sometimes I think that younger people are more open to the ideas of liberty. And then sometimes I'll see them, get on board with our candidate over here, Bernie Sanders, and his, full-on socialism. What's the temperature in Denmark?
People are quite open to individual causes like the TV licensing stuff or the legalization of cannabis stuff. Many people are on board with that, and you can use that as leverage to kind of speak to them from a libertarian perspective. Because if you just go full on, privatize the police, privatize the courts, many people, they just regard you as a lunatic. So it's pretty important, I think, to just start by introducing subjects that will resonate with people, and there are lots of those subjects that can just help them ease into a more libertarian way of thinking, I guess. So that's been my strategy all along, just taking up just regular things in people's everyday lives, just saying, hey, this is just wrong, and this would be better with more liberty and not less, and we could solve it this way instead of the state's way. And many people are really receptive to that approach, I think. So
what's an example of some recent activism that you've done? I know that you've done some activism around, a lot of people don't know this, I didn't know this, there really is there's no First Amendment type law in Denmark. There's no freedom of speech. So I know you've done some things to sort of raise awareness with shock value there.
Yeah, we have no First Amendment. That's correct. So we can't say bad things about religious people, or we can't badmouth them because of their sexual orientation or their ethnic background. So if somebody says that white people are just horrible and they beat their girlfriends and do all kinds of bad stuff and they smell bad, whatever, you can be prosecuted. And
if they just post that on Facebook, or if they
post that on Facebook, they can get charged and convicted for saying things about ethnic groups and religious groups and things of that nature. So I've done quite a bit of activism saying things about Buddhists and Muslims and Christians and white men and all kinds of things. And I've been convicted some pretty hefty fines for saying those things. Not imprisoned yet, but you could, in principle, be thrown in jail for saying somebody that somebody disagrees with.
And do people in Denmark, did they agree with those laws? I mean, I guess we take freedom of speech so much for granted over here that, there almost is in certain segments, there's some pushback from the left on freedom of speech in certain areas. They want to restrict the speech they want to restrict. But is the populace in Denmark, do they think that the restriction of freedom of speech is good for them?
It's hard for me to say because I live in kind of a free speech bubble. All of my friends and all of the people that I have in contact with, they really hate those laws. But I guess if I should try to be objective, that there's some pushback against it also in the mainstream, but it's maybe not super widespread. When small political parties try to get rid of those laws, they never succeed because, what about people saying bad things about our favorite voting group? That we don't want to allow that. So, no, I don't think we will have those laws repealed anytime soon. So it's not looking very libertarian in that regard.
So I have to ask you because every person I meet from outside the U.S., you have to ask them this question. What's your view on what's going on in the United States now with Donald Trump and the impeachment circus? And do you follow it? I mean, does anybody care? Or
I follow it a bit through Dave Smith mainly. He has a lot of stuff about the impeachment stuff, but I don't think the Danish populace per se are following the impeachment hearings and so on. Most Danes are pretty social democratic leaning, and they just flat out hate Donald Trump. So you can just regard Denmark as just a big bunch of liberal Democrats, really, more or less. So they follow American politics, but it's through a kind of a filter of the mainstream press, and the mainstream press, they really, really hate Donald Trump. And I don't like him either, but I think that there are some funny aspects to him. And all the people that I really don't like, they hate Donald Trump. So there's always that.
Yeah, that's funny. So that's cool that you listen to Part of the Problem. That's what's so cool about, podcasting today. You can pick up a podcast anywhere in the world.
Yeah, sure. And especially if you're a libertarian-leaning person, there's no real podcasting sphere outside the U.S. If you want to get into those Austro-libertarian things, you just have to follow the Mises Institute and Tom Woods and all those kinds of guys. So I think there are many Danish libertarians, and there are not that many of them, but a lot of them, they get their influences from the U.S.
Well, that's cool. It makes me think we're actually doing something. Screaming into microphones over here in the United States. People,
they are listening.
Before I let you go, Lars, if you could just talk a little bit about, you said you started the YouTube channel. Talk about first where people can find that and some of the content that you have there.
Yeah, it's on YouTube, and it's under my own name. It's just Lars Anderson, and Sen with an S-E-N, and it's all in Danish. I'm ashamed to say. So it's mostly gibberish to non-Danish speakers. But yeah, it's a pretty in Danish terms, it's a pretty successful YouTube channel, especially considering that I'm only one person and I'm just talking into a camera in my living room. I got around 250,000 views per month, and that's not a lot in like a global scale, but in Denmark for a small political channel, it's pretty good. So
what's the URL to find it?
Oh, just punch in Lars Anderson, and don't pick the archer guy, because there's also a Danish guy that shoots bow and arrow, and that's not me. Actually, I was invited to a Chinese television something show once because they thought I was him, so I declined.
Yeah, I see him here. He's the first one that comes up.
Yeah.
It's probably is that a common name? I'm sure there's a lot of Andersons.
It's a really common name. It's very generic.
Okay, well, even though it's all in Danish, I'm still going to subscribe
thanks.
To support you, and I encourage my audience to do so as well. And also, this is a small world we live in, so if you have family, relatives, friends, whatever, who are over in Denmark, then send them Lars' way and get them following his YouTube. And just one more thing before I let you go, if there's anything else you want to plug or have some parting words of wisdom for the people of the Lions of Liberty world out there.
Oh, words of wisdom, I don't know really. Just I don't have any right now. So just thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for coming on the show, Lars. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Hope you guys enjoyed today's interview with Lars Anderson. It's always amazing to me when I talk with someone. I say it's always amazing, like I've done this a bunch of times. This is one of the first times I've talked with a libertarian who was over in Europe and in Lars's case in Denmark. But it amazes me when they're plugged in, listening to podcasts that are produced over here into the United States. It gives me so much hope that podcasts like Lions of Liberty, like Part of the Problem, like Tom Woods, are making not only an impact here in the United States, because I know we are, but also across the world, which is just incredible. I look at our stats on our podcast hosts, and I see people out there listening, but to actually hear it, from somebody's mouth who has listened to the podcast in another country is pretty awesome to hear. And Lars is doing fantastic things in Denmark and fighting for liberty. You know, it's cool. He doesn't want to get into politics. I don't want to get into politics either. I've dabbled in that a little bit myself, helping out with managing a campaign for a U.S. Senate run this last U.S. Senate election cycle in 2018. Got my taste of that, and for now, that's enough politics for me. So I definitely understand where Lars is coming from. It's so interesting that he came out, said he didn't want to enforce drug laws, basically was forced to resign. And I've had conversations with people recently who have come out and said that libertarians, people who are against the war on drugs, who are against these injustices and atrocities, should sign up to enforce them and become a police officer. So that doesn't make any sense. But it's nice to hear from someone like Lars, who was a police officer and came out and said he didn't want to enforce them, and he was forced to resign. So in Denmark, we know at least that's not the case. And, you know, I don't know if it's the case across the board in U.S. police departments, because there's so many local police departments. But I would guess if you did that in the U.S., the result would be very, very similar. You would be submitting your resignation probably pretty quickly, because if you're not on the street collecting the revenue, which is really the police main job of the police, is to collect revenue. If you're not doing that, then you're not doing your job. So that's why they have you out there. But today's show, just awesome. Really happy to be able to speak with Lars and get to know him. And if you happen to speak Danish, check out his YouTube channel. Or if you're looking to learn how to speak Danish, also, you can listen. Just go in cold. Don't even study or try to learn it. Just start watching and listening to Lars's YouTube channel. Over time, it might take years, but over time, you will understand it. I promise you that. Actually, I don't promise you that. I don't know. I don't know how that works. Maybe you'll never understand it. Anyway, so I want to thank you guys for listening. It's coming up on the Christmas holiday, one of my favorite times of year. And I'm excited. Of course, at Lions of Liberty, we don't take any time off, so you will have all of your podcasts Monday, Wednesday, Friday next week, even on Christmas Day. Felony Friday next Friday, and Mark's show on Monday. So be sure to subscribe to the Lions of Liberty podcast wherever you get podcasts. I've been listening recently on Spotify to my podcast. I really like Spotify's interface. And on Spotify now, if you're listening to a Lions of Liberty podcast, or any podcast, but I prefer you do this for Lions of Liberty, you can share it to your Instagram story. Great way to tell your friends how to check out a podcast. And you share it to your Instagram story, and it gives that little link up in the corner that people can click, and it takes them right to the podcast, which is, I've been looking for the technology like this for as long as I can remember. Easy way to share a podcast. Hopefully that interface goes into Facebook too, and other social medias. But I've been rambling for too long. Thank you all for listening to today's show. Thank you for supporting the Lions of Liberty. And with that being said, guys, this is John Odermatt signing off. Always remember to keep your head up and the fires of liberty burning.